Weather Warriors, come on in. Welcome to this edition of State of the Alley Address. This is a new show that I'm going to have on this channel here. We're going to talk about the tornado targets for today, the tornado potential, where they're going to occur, how many, and other hazards. I'm going to also go over some basic forecasting techniques and storm chasing techniques as well in these episodes. So if you like these, the show idea here for the Alley, maybe even parts of the East Coast, let me know below. Shoot me your ideas as well. So. Also, comment below if you'd like me to make a large storm chasing and tornado forecasting course. This would be complete A to Z, very to the point for severe weather enthusiasts. Throw out some ideas below, comment below if you'd like to, if that would be a good idea. So, first and foremost, look at the SPC. We're only a couple hours out from this event. Actually, it's starting to really unfold as I talk now, but good risk for hail and wind and possibly tornadoes in these hatched and 30% areas. Okay, so your enhanced areas. These are the areas I'm going to pay attention to on this show. Tornado potential by the SPC is going to be the strongest out in this region of Nebraska. So we're going to fast forward this. This model real quick. We're going to look at the HRR model, the 18Z, and I'm going to go over to the dew points. Actually, what I'll do first is look at the jet. So we'll look at the national view. Look at the jet stream. This is going to really, that's what's responsible for kicking off these storms here. So right now, actually this is 20Z right now, so we'll go fast forward a couple hours. This is 3 p.m. when I made this thing. So you got your long wave trough out here. This is responsible for all the severe weather coming up over the next week. What you're going to have is you're going to have a lot of dips in the jet stream and little kinks, and so you're going to have short waves that evolve out of this jet stream that produce daily events. But this pattern, this long wave pattern, is really good for severe weather. So what you're going to see here over the next couple hours is this short wave eject out into the plains and produce severe weather. Another kink down there, but you can see all the shear here. Now this is just below the jet stream, so you got your jet stream way above, you got your surface, okay, and so this is kind of the area we're looking at, and at 500 millibars, and this is going to help blow the updrafts, or the precipitation away from the updrafts. So this is going to enhance our storm potential. They're going to keep building, longer lasting. That's good for our storms. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is the direction of this, okay, so usually you need about 40 knots or so for severe weather, especially supercells. And we also want to look at the direction of this. And so it's generally southwest down here, and it's a little bit more south-southwest up here. And then it kind of bends out this way, west-southwest in northeast Nebraska. And so this tracks into the area around 5, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 50 to 60 knots up in Nebraska, more southwesterly flow down here in Kansas with 50 to 60 knots or so. Now let's zoom in here into the setup region, central U.S. You can see this kicks out, around 4 p.m. Whoops, go back, 4 or 5 p.m. Your greatest threat is going to be in this region right here. Your lift, all that type of stuff. And they're going to have a dry line down here as well. So you can see, and I drew the dry line. And we'll look at the dry line real quick. We'll go to 22Z. We'll stop because that animation thing freaks out a lot here. So we'll go out to the dew points. We'll look at 5 p.m. here. Okay, so here's your low. You can see that cold front down here. There's a lot of moisture behind this cold front, and it's not overly aggressive either. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to have some supercells out here in western Nebraska and maybe even the farthest part of northern Colorado. And that could produce some hail and maybe even a brief tornado or two. I've seen sometimes you'll get little brief tornadoes in the pocket back there behind the low, behind the cold front. You might get a little elephant trunk or two. So watch for that as a secondary target. You got your warm front here. It's a very strong warm front. You got a lot of pooling out along this thing. If you can get some type of lift out here to pop stuff off, I mean, you could see a storm out east too. Threat's very low. But sometimes you'll see that as well. You'll see the setup over here, and then you'll sometimes see a random storm fire east. So I'd keep your eye on that. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Threat's pretty low, but keep an eye on that. So that would be like a third area of a target. Okay, so we're going to look at this low again. Your dry line is going to be right here. You see the moisture is much less than it is out here. Southwesterly winds. Really no dry line bulge with this setup that's overly impressive. Sometimes you get a nice strong punch of southwesterly winds and you'll get more of an arc, but not as much today. But should be enough to support supercells with tornado potential. And remember those southwest winds. We're going to go back to the 500s. We'll look at this. You can see the winds, kind of draw this on here. Southwest, 50 to 60 knots, more northerly up here. And then we'll go back. Whoops. Draw that out again. And we'll go back to the surface dew points. I guess I didn't save the drawing, but anyway, there it is. So this is kind of our shear vectors we're looking at here. We'll look at the shear, actually. I think they have 0 to 6 km shear here for the same time. Shear vector is a little more westerly. So what this is going to do essentially is your general flow is going to blow off the dry line. So your storms are going to fire along the dry line and then they'll kind of blow off into the warm, moist air. And this can support supercells with tornado potential. Your warm front's right here. What you'd like to see with a warm front is those shear vectors aligned with the warm front. The dry line is a little bit different. You want them to orient perpendicular, more like a 45-degree angle, and that's kind of happening. And then along that warm front, you kind of want them to glide along it. And so that's pretty good along here, and then also up in this region. Not as much here, but I don't think there's going to be storms up in that area. So it looks pretty favorable really everywhere. So that'll be interesting to watch. Down here, maybe more of a hail threat, but and there's stronger capping down there. So we'll go back to that dry line real quick and look at it. Here's your lows kind of sitting in here. Now your biggest tornado threat is going to happen probably in this area near the triple point. You got your cold front, warm front, dry line merging together, and the cap's going to be a little bit weaker up there. It's going to be stronger down south. I would say there's a decent shot down here, but the cap's going to be strong. It's going to be kind of iffy down there. But what I would expect is you'd see storms to fire very soon. They're going to start to fire here first and then over here. And then what they're going to do is going to track north. And some of those storms that can attach along this warm front right here or very near it, you could see some enhanced shear along that, enhanced vorticity along that front, which could enhance the tornado threat. So potential for a high tornado threat there, especially on the west side. Now with warm fronts, it's usually a little bit juicier, so you might have kind of a messier storm mode. Maybe not as good for chasing, but I also think you're going to have a higher tornado threat, so it's kind of a gamble. The road network ain't as good up there either, so that's something to keep in mind. Down here, it's going to be a little bit more isolated. Dynamics might be just a step lower, still very good, but maybe a little bit lower. But it's going to be isolated. Road network's a little bit better. And so that would be the area I would target for chasing. And for days, I've been saying McCook area or just east of there. And so I think that's going to be your best area. Again, maybe a second area out here. So let's look at that instability real quick, and then we'll look at the radar. And then we'll look at the HREF model, because that's been doing pretty well lately as well. Look at the composite reflectivity. This is like the radar in advance here. And look at, how about the 3 km helicity, updraft helicity. I think there's one with both. So these radar, or these cells that you see that are blowing up, this is 22Z. When you see these little tracks, that indicates they have updraft helicity, which could mean enhanced tornado potential. Not always, but sometimes that's the case. So especially if you can determine if they're surface-based or not, which most of those are. So this model fires things around 3 or 4 p.m. out here, kind of along that dry line. This is going to kind of track up into the warm front area. So I think if anything fires out here, this has got really high tornado potential, but it also could be messy. And so that's something to watch. Storm is going to fire first out here. Mostly going to be hailers, but you could see an isolated tornado or two, brief tornado, maybe a photogenic one out there. But again, very brief, and the threat's a little bit lower. Cap's going to be stronger out here, so you're going to see storms struggle down there. But if you can get something to pop down in southwest Kansas, it could be pretty good and very isolated, good for chasing. Again, this is something you want to watch, is this area right here, the cell that tracks northeast. Now, it's not always going to be the same with these models, but I would generally say that something just south of that triple point along that dry line is a good area to target if you're chasing as well. And if you live in that area, watch out for tornado potential. And so this tracks northeast. You can see lots of cells in Nebraska, kind of a messier storm mode, but you can see some hail as well in these areas. So that's through 10 p.m. Now, the thing to watch here is right around sunset, I think the tornado potential is going to explode for this area on the south side. Your tornado potential might be stronger earlier up here and will continue after dark or near dark or just after. But I think it's going to be the best near or around sunset for south central Nebraska as the shear increases. And here's why. Now, look at this. Go to the 850. This is the low-level jet. It's not the best at the moment. Go back to 4 p.m. right around now, 3 or 4 p.m. It's decent. You got 30 to 35 knots. But watch this area down here. This little max is going to move north and really start to strengthen right around dark or after dark as it usually does. But it's going to be pretty strong. So look at around 7 p.m. You could be dealing with a 40 to 50 knot low-level jet screaming north into the setup region, which will enhance shear. So when you have winds that just really blow a lot stronger above the surface, it's going to create some more vorticity and spin for tornadoes. So that will enhance the tornado potential greatly, so you can see explodes. But the other issue is it could be kind of messy right around or after sunset. So that's going to be something to watch. But I would say earlier on, through about sunset, look for that region to light up with tornado potential. And then around sunset, maybe 6 or 7 p.m., 8 p.m., this area is going to really start to light up with tornado potential. And we'll look at the significant tornado parameter. And you can see that area is already pretty primed up in north central Nebraska along that warm front. Enhanced vorticity along that front. And then 22, 5, 6, 7 p.m. Here's that dry line really starting to light up. You see, once that shear kicks in, we got plenty of cape all over here. We're just kind of waiting on that low-level shear especially. And once that kicks in, you can see the tornado threat just blows up. This is a significant tornado parameter. Really anything over a 1 is a heightened tornado risk, and you got maybe 6 or 7, 8, 9 out there. This isn't something that I would always use, okay? This is just kind of supplementary. I know a lot of people get excited with this stuff because you see, okay, there's a heightened tornado potential out here, but then you're also missing some other things out here, like some source of lift to get those storms going. But if you can get something to go out here in West Iowa, could be a nice surprise or a bad surprise depending on where you live. If it hits a city, that's not good either. So we'll fast forward this into 10 p.m. and then the cap starts to build again. You see when that white color starts, it kind of essentially means the cap's coming back in. So when you get after dark, it starts cooling at the surface. And then when your cap is kind of in the mid-levels, like over here in the mid-levels, with this crappy drawing, but whatever. So what will happen is your temperatures will start to cool at the surface. They'll be warmer above. And so the cool air just sinks. It just doesn't get past that cap. It's warm enough. It might rise for a while, but then it'll hit this warm layer, and then it won't do much. And that's why you don't get any storms with these caps. And so let's see. We'll look at those crossovers real quick. Go to 21, 23Z, and what is 0Z? How about that? Or 23. Good directional shear here in Texas. Probably a good tornado potential if you can get something to fire down there. And there's your soundings. You can see that directional shear, a little bit capped, but maybe some good instability too. So let's go up to northwest Kansas around 5 p.m. Good sounding. This is your directional shear. When you have these flags, this is southwest or southeast at surface, and then above there is southwest. Almost a little bit of back veer, but nothing too bad. You'd almost like to see slightly more directional shear there, but overall, this should be enough, especially along a dry line. This is your instability between this white line and red line. The fatter that is, the higher the tornado threat. Pretty good instability there. Dew point spreads are okay. Maybe a little bit better would be needed, but overall, all right. But this area, this hodograph, when they start to really get large and circular, which they will towards dark, that's when your tornado threat's going to increase. So let me click out of this, and then we'll look at the hodograph a couple hours later. Go to like 0Z. We'll kind of click out ahead. You don't want to click over the storms because the storms screw up the environment locally, so they contaminate the environment. So you can see that hodograph. Look at that though. That increases substantially. This is going to be your low levels out here. This is going to be kind of your upper levels looking at this hodograph. And you can see this starts to stretch out and get larger, especially at low levels. Your surface is right here. That means your tornado potential typically is going to increase if storms are discrete and there's enough directional shear, I think, to support that, and it's going to be capped as well in some areas. And so I think you're going to have a very discrete storm mode with potential for tornadoes out in this region towards dark. And then before that, going to be a little bit messier, but some supercells of tornadoes before dark. So that is that. And then we'll look at the HREF model real quick, and we'll go over to, let's see, I think there's a updraft helicity somewhere with the radar. I don't know if they have it on here. Yeah, this is the updraft helicity, and you can see, again, this is going to be kind of measuring the storm and supercell tornado potential. Not totally, I mean, but it has lots of convective potential out here in western Nebraska. It's actually been pretty aggressive in this region, the HREF, and it's also been pretty good here. And so, like I said, I think those are going to be your two greatest areas. Out here, it might be a little bit messy, but a pretty high tornado potential still. If I was chasing, I'd probably go down here in this region, or even play back there just for fun as a secondary target. Then we'll look at the SPC real quick, and we'll go over to the meso-analysis. There's actually a severe watch out there right now in western Nebraska. And we'll wait for this. Click on the meso-analysis. Supercell composite. This is going to measure your supercell potential. It's starting to blow up along that warm front. But again, storm is going to fire out here first. If you can get a cell out here to kind of track along that warm front, and probably will, you're going to have a heightened tornado potential. Okay, so look for that. And then these are storms out ahead of the dry line. Probably not going to be that strong, but we'll keep an eye on that. These storms out here are along and north of the warm front. So if you imagine your warm front like this as a slope, as you go north, that slope kind of grows, increases a little bit. And it's actually going to be a little more elevated. So this stuff out here, if anything really over 30 miles north of that warm front, you can imagine this is like 30 miles. It's a little bit more than that, but it's going to be a little more elevated. So that's all elevated stuff. Here's your storms out here producing hail potential. And then we'll look at the significant tornado parameter. It's starting to really maximize up here. Again, if you can get a storm to get up in that region, look out, especially if it's discrete. This area down here is going to increase towards sunset. So I wouldn't worry about the low numbers right now. I think that will increase pretty substantially when you get that low level shear to kick in. And then we'll look at the LCL heights. Generally with tornadoes, you want them to lower lower than 1500, 750 especially or lower. But you know, you're going to get decent LCLs in this region for the most part. I think that's good enough for tornadoes. Bulk shear 40 plus, good for tornadoes. Got that out there. And then look at the 0 to 1 kilometer shear. And this is another thing that's really going to increase after dark. Okay, you got some stuff set up along that warm front right now, so I think that's why the tornado threat is going to be the earliest up there, and then it's going to increase down here as that low-level jet increases. We'll look at the CAPE and the vorticity. I believe they have that on here. And then when you see these things overlapping, like CAPE and the red lines is CAPE, the instability, the kind of the energy in the atmosphere. When it kind of overlaps these vorticity lines, you could have heightened tornado potential. I believe that's 0 to 3 CAPE, so that might change a little bit later on. Look at that a little later. But let's see. Got shear. That's not loading for some reason. Let's look at a couple other things and wrap it up here. Look at the 850 millibar analysis. You got your moist plume, your 850 down here. Your low-level jet is going to carry in a transport moisture up here. It hasn't quite really gotten up to Nebraska yet, but will soon, and the winds will increase with it as well. Moisture convergence. You have your winds. Here's your southeast winds. You can see you have east winds along that warm front. Northeast winds, they kind of back along it. And when you have southwest flow above that, you're going to have winds kind of at the southeast, at the surface, and southwest up high, which will enhance the directional shear, which will enhance vorticity and your storm, supercell, tornado potential. And that's why this area is really under the gun. And we got plenty of moisture convergence out there, so we could see something pop up in this region, some out here as well. So really look for this area, which is already happening, something to maybe pop out there soon, and then something to pop out there near Colby, Kansas soon. Those are the three areas I'd be targeting. And then that small 10% chance that something fires out there, but that's what I would be targeting, and maybe Texas as well. So there's a lot to play from, but I would go to Colby if I was chasing. And then surface frontogenesis, pretty strong there with that warm front. I think we, looking at most things, significant tornado parameter. Let's see, how about hail? Significant hail parameter. Pretty strong there in central Nebraska, possibly baseball-sized hail out there with the instability we got going, plenty of instability. And then out here, you're going to have some good hail as well. And then I think that's pretty good right now. How about precipitable water? That's generally in the 1+ range. Climatologically, probably looking at classic supercells, especially along this dry line. Maybe a little bit more messy up here along the warm front, but you know, I don't think it's going to be you might get some LP supercells out there, low precipitation supercells out in Colorado. With that, it's a little bit drier out there, but maybe some decent supercells out there. So I think that's most things here on the mesoanalysis. See if there's one other thing we want to look at here. Storm relative helicity. This is going to be your low-level shear, essentially, for supercells. It's going to start to expand south soon, but pretty good, maximized up there along the warm front. So in general, to sum it up, I'm going to say I would target kind of this region right here initially. That's going to be the highest supercell potential early on or later on. Once it enters this region right here, I think your highest tornado potential is going to kind of happen in this region right here. Probably, let me draw a target here. Probably somewhere like this right here. And that's going to happen around 7 p.m. or so, maybe around sunset. And then also another area up here with heightened tornado potential along that triple point, along that warm front, and that might be a little bit earlier on. So that's probably looking like the forecast today. Capped a little bit down here. If it wasn't capped, you'd probably see some enhanced tornado potential down there as well. So that looks like pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. If you like these videos, comment below. Comment some ideas. Comment if you'd like to see a big course. Might get some experts in on it as well. So hope you enjoyed today's video. Smash that thumbs up button, comment below, and I'll see you soon.